Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, I just started the slide and I can't see, Jen, I can't see what's going on with the go-to, but we'll give everybody like a couple more minutes.
Sounds good.
Oh, there we go. It did come back up. Okay, Jen, are you seeing the first slide?
Yep.
Okay, good. Now we'll give everybody one more minute and we'll go ahead and get started.
I believe you'll want to change your display settings
Okay.
because I see all three slides. There you go.
That work? Okay, Jen, what do you think? Go ahead and get started.
Yeah, we have 12, so I would go ahead.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm looking down the list here, and I think I've met most of you, but my name's Ron Reed. I joined NFRC about 2.5 years ago and came on to work to get the PCP program accredited, and we've been working with some groups and some task groups and what have you since. And we do have some public documents out for review right now, or some documents out for public review right now. And wanted to give everybody a chance if there were any questions, kind of a big picture view. So we're not going to address any, specifics about the documents on this call or in this webinar, but we will be addressing those once the public comment period closes on June 19th. But we just wanted to give a quick overview, similar to what we gave at the fall meeting in October out in San Diego. So what we'll cover today is kind of the standards and the recognition that we're seeking, what the accreditation means to NFRC and to the stakeholders, what those standards and accreditation are, a quick view on the planned implementation, how we've gone through some of the document development and what we're doing here with the public comment. And then we did get a few questions that were sent in with registrations. I'll cover those, and then we'll go ahead and open it up at the end for any questions folks might have. So the standards we're going to look for accreditation to, or the standard, I should say, is the ISO IEC 17065, requirements for bodies certifying products, processes, and services. And we will first be seeking that through ANAB, the ANSI National Accreditation Board. And then we will also seek recognition through the Standards Council of Canada to the same standard. However, they do have just a few additional requirements for accreditation in Canada. And we already have those in the documents that are out for review right now. We've addressed the Canadian, I guess, additions as well, but we wanted to make sure that we can get through the ANAB process, get recognition in the US, and we can actually get, and I'll cover it here in a few minutes, mutual recognition for a period of time from SCC. And what it means for NFRC, it provides international recognition and acceptance of the product certification program. And I was actually on a webinar with Nancy a few weeks ago, and there was a note that came up on one of their blogs while I was on there. And they put it as accreditation legitimizes certification, and certification legitimizes the individual organization, service, or product. Of course, in our case, it's products, but the accreditation helps legitimize the program, the NFRC program. It increases accountability and confidence in the performance ratings and the certifications that we're putting out. And it helps in some of the rules we're kind of redefining and getting set up in a little bit of a better system to streamline the path for additional certification programs. It also increases the acceptance of the certifications, increasing the value to our stakeholders. Could potentially provide access to additional markets and improves consistency and transparency throughout the program. The document development side has been a path. We've been working with a board work group that has been comprised of 5 members of the board in the development and editing of every document that's out there for public comment today. We've also had input from manufacturers, staff reviews, IA reviews. We've talked to labs, both physical test labs and simulation labs. And then as needed, we put it to our legal folks to make sure that we're in compliance with some of the legal portions of accreditation, as well as make sure we're not overstepping our bounds anywhere as far as, license agreements, that we have our mark and labeling defined in a way that's not going to get us into any trademark issues or anything like that. And we've gotten their feedback and have taken their feedback and put into some of these documents as well. So the implementation plan, and I know some of you that I've talked with that are on this call has not been as quickly as I'd like to see it, but I get a little impatient. But we did put out a little bit of a plan in October at the fall meeting. And you can see those dates here. And we've been working on some technology stuff here through the first part of this year. And it has pushed some of these dates a little bit, but we're hoping as we roll into next year that we do, I won't say catch up completely, but we're not as far behind as what we are right now. So, as these documents have been out for public comment, we've been working on some different things on how we can collect information, how some of that information may be displayed in the future. So we're really working on both sides of it. And the public comment of the new documents, the board work group, in working with them, decided that we'll use the public comment process for the accredited program documents, following the same process as we do for the FinStar documents. And when we get those comments back, and I know some of them, I know there have been several people already comment, we're collecting those comments. We're going to kind of take them, group them into light comments, and then we'll address them based on what the accreditation requirements are. And if we're looking at comments that are going to require procedural, rule-based revisions, we'll have those revisions made. We'll take them back to the work group. And likely with some of those sections, we'll come back out for some public comment on those particular items. And then we'll figure out how to fit them back into the documents. And it has been a good process. It's been a good process in getting feedback from different stakeholders. Because it's allowed us, I think, to see things from some different perspectives in trying to clean up some of the areas where language may have been a little, could be interpreted in several different manners, or may not have been clear enough to try to get a participant to understand, I won't say exactly what they need to do, but lead them down the right path to stay within the requirements of the program. But some of the questions that we did have sent in is one of the questions: what's it look like when we step into this program? And like many other things with NFRC, we will run a pilot program. And the pilot program will initially be set to look at recertification of Windows only. And if you remember the implementation slide, we're looking to kind of roll into that at the beginning of 2024. And, you know, again, part of that is we're looking to upgrade the way we handle some information and some technology upgrades, as well as we know everybody's kind of scrambling right now with version 7 being kind of leading the charge as we head into the middle of the year here and then finally get into October where it gets full implementation. And the feeling was that was just going to be a little too much to deal with. So we did push the pilot program off a little bit. But again, I mean, we'll look at rolling it out with recertification of Windows, and we'll gauge and see how things are going. And, you know, from there, adding other, I'll say, programs, meaning other steps in the program, like full certification of Windows or recertification of doors or films or whatever, is a lot easier. But we want to make sure that we have a process, a good process in place for dealing with the certifications and recertifications before we apply for accreditation, before we apply to ANAB to set up that first assessment. And so we can go into that feeling that we can show them, you know, not only show them how the program's written, but show them how we're handling the program and certifications that are going through the program. Labeling implementation, there was a question that came through on that because, and I didn't show them here, and I apologize, and I can pull that up if you would like. They're moving forward as we had shown in San Diego. There's going to be 2 marks. One is a U.S. only mark, and the other one will be a combined Canadian and U.S. mark, where it's the same registered mark. It just has a C on the left side and a U.S. on the right side. That is a Standards Council Canada requirement to show the markets that the products can be certified in or are certified in. And the question came up, there were multiple questions, but I'll address the implementation of the labeling. We'll look at that as we get closer to going to SEC and applying for accreditation. But with the experience that I've had in other programs that I've worked in, we'll generally give 12 to 18 months for manufacturers to make that transition. So I don't want anybody thinking that we're going to roll into this and immediately you have to change over to the combined mark. Ideally, that's great because you're covered in both markets, but we understand it does take some time to make those changeovers. And right now, we'll look at writing an implementation plan that'll probably span and give manufacturers about 12 to 18 months to make those changes. And honestly, and I'll put it out there now, I don't think that should be difficult. But if we do run into difficulties, there's nothing saying that we can't change that plan as we go through it. And again, from my experience, the accrediting bodies have been pretty reasonable in allowing those changes in labeling to take place and giving folks enough time to make that change. And then there were a couple questions about forms and checklists that were shown in some of the documents. And we initially moved down the path of better standardizing the way information is provided to NFRC and standardize some of the information that we're collecting. And in the documents, you'll see some forms and stuff. We've actually, in the last couple of months, have kind of moved toward electronic versions of those forms, where we're going to look to have a lot of that stuff done online and have it feed directly into a database. So there will likely be some changes along that line as we go forward and see how the technology is going to work. And what we're hoping to do, again, is to standardize the information that's coming to support certifications, standardize the way it's presented and submitted, and kind of streamline everything so folks aren't having to go to one location to get one form, a separate location, print forms off, fill forms out, send them in. We're really working hard to have a streamlined portal where everything's done, you submit it, and it comes right into where we want to house that information. And it's to try to reduce the number of documents required, as well as make it a little bit easier and improve the flow of information. So, I know I went through that pretty quickly, but this was really a period to allow folks to ask some questions if they hadn't sent something in. So, I mean, Jen, I guess we can open it up. And I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in. Or Jen, I know you and I talked, it's a smaller group. We were just going to go ahead and unmute everybody.
If they want to ask a question, they can raise their hand and I will be happy to unmute them.
Okay, that I can't see, so. But I at least hope we answered the questions that were sent in with the registration.
Question here from Joe Hayden.
Oh.
Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Ron. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. Thanks for the information. Not so much a question, but I might offer one other small comment as to why we're doing this. And one of the fundamental drivers, as I recall, is we need to get accreditation with SCC so that Natural Resources Canada can continue to recognize the NFRC program for purposes of Energy Star Canada. That was really one of the fundamental first drivers that pushed us in this direction. So I think folks need to be aware of that if we didn't go through this, we were going to be at risk of losing our recognition with NRCan for Energy Star Canada. So people need to understand that part of it. So I thought I'd offer that comment as well. So, thanks.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Yes, I guess I kind of take that for granted, knowing what our drive is there. But and there's also some pressure even from the EPA side to get the program accredited. And we're working toward that. And as I mentioned, I mean, one of the good things that we can do here is get it accredited through ANAB. And I've already had the discussions with SCC that once we're accredited through ANAB to 17065, they'll recognize that we can get mutual recognition with our application to SCC, which will give us about another year to work out some of the kinks, get documents translated, because they do need to be translated to French to get accreditation in Canada, and let us work through, you know, some of the growing pains as we kind of expand the program. And again, that's discussions I've already had with SCC, and they will allow us to do that.
I have another question from Steve Strawn. Go ahead, Steve, you're unmuted, or you're self-muted.
Afternoon, Steve.
Good afternoon. Actually, it's still morning here, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Probably some of us that are still morning, but that's only for 9 more minutes. So, Ron, I appreciate you putting this together. One of the questions that I had as I read through all of the documents, it seems like there's an awful lot of redundancy in the language between all of the documents, where, you know, basically cut and paste from the existing 700 documents, for example. It just seems like those have been transferred to multiple documents. Is that really necessary, or is there a reason for that?
Are you looking at the product requirements?
It's really all the language, all inclusive throughout the documents. There's just redundancy in stating the same thing over and over and over again.
I will admit there is some redundancy, yes, and there is language that was carried over, and there's language that I'll say was kind of refined coming from the 700. And I know in the product requirement documents, there's some language that comes across in each of those documents, and it's really for we're setting it up that way really for a couple reasons. One, the 7,000 applies to everybody. Anybody that's going to come for certification through the NFRC PCP. The product requirement documents, the reason we broke them out that way is we can now go and edit those individually without affecting the full 7,000, the full program document. And honestly, we could add product categories, or we could add other types of certification if we would ever want to go down that path. And it makes it a little bit easier for NFRC to add those to our scopes of accreditation without changing the main program document. I will ask you, and we can have the conversation. If you feel that there's language that we're reiterating in the 7,000 itself too much, we can definitely take a look at that. And
I'll include those with my comments, where I think that maybe we could economize on words to the degree that it is still clear within the primary document. Does all of that need to be carried over to the others? I suppose you could argue that it may be necessary, but I've got a handful of comments that I'll submit. It can be considered.
Yeah, please do. I mean, that's like I said, and I think you and I talked out in San Diego. I mean, we wanted to get this out to the members, let them take a look at it, get their feedback, and we'll make the necessary changes based on the requirements of the accreditation.
Well, and I appreciate that. I do recall our conversation, and as a follow-up, and I may be as guilty of this as you in not following up until just now. Because as we talked, you were going to sort of get me all the information so that I could read and understand where we were going with all of this. But this within the last couple of days is the first I've seen of any of that. So bluntly, a little disappointed in that, but that's just the way life is. Probably all have more than enough on our plates anyhow. But, no worries.
Hey, Ron, Joe Hayden here again. Steve, I'll make sure you do understand one thing, that the current 700 document is going to go away. It's going to be replaced by all these.
Sure. No, I understand that, Joe. It's really more of as all of this goes away, and frankly, the timeline should give us enough time to understand all of this. There doesn't appear to be anything dramatically new in there. What I was sort of hoping for was a quotes red line version of that so that we could see and understand that there's no changes. I mean, we're sort of running blind right now without laying the 700 out next to each of these and looking at the language. What's changed? Is there a red line version of this?
There is not a red line version of these comparing them to the 700. I mean, what I can say is we've been very careful not to make dramatic changes. I'm not going to say that there are changes in some of the areas, you know, like refining some of the labeling requirements and who can and cannot put on a label. You know, a big part of the accreditation is control of the NFRC mark. So, you know, I'm sure you were aware of what the labeling requirements were. I mean, we broke those out. We have a labeling and mark usage document in and of itself.
Well, and I think, honestly, Ron, that may be helpful. As we had a discussion earlier this week within the Door Matrix Label Work Group, there was a lot of discussion on people perhaps not understanding how the label should be used and should there be a user guide. Honestly, as I look at this, it may make some of that need for a user guide a little bit clearer, but really I put a lot of that responsibility on the participant or the licensee to know how to correctly label the products. So there are certainly some benefits to this, but my comment really was related to overall, it's hard to determine whether there were significant changes or were the changes just simply clarifications without effectively changing the requirements.
Yeah, I mean, what I can say there is, you know, if you look at the 7,000, most of, you know, the changes that we were making in there are clarifications and looking for ways to make the process easier. Now, you know, it's hard to say that without having it in practice right now. But, you know, we were looking for areas, and we're continuing to look for those areas to make it easier. And, you know, it's kind of funny you mentioned user guides for labeling. We've actually have already taken a first shot, and I don't know if Michelle Sism's on here. I don't think she is, but we've actually already taken a first shot of what we call help sheets or cut sheets, whatever you want to call them, for each of the product categories. That kind of defines, here's how you label a window. It's 1 or 2 pages. Here's how you label a applied film. It's 1 or 2 pages. So we are thinking along that line as well to help participants in some of those areas that may raise some questions.
Good. I think that would, I hope, address some of the questions or concerns that came up in our call earlier this week. So I appreciate that. Is there, will that go out for some member comment or input on that as well?
Yeah, we can do that.
Joe and I may be among the top labelers in the whole program, and you know, it would be helpful if some of us who are intense label users could have a look at that and offer some input.
But yeah, let me make a note on that, Strawn, or let's Steve Strawn, and we can do that.
When we're ready, we have another question.
Yeah, Steve, I don't know that they're quite in that state yet, but we can work toward that.
It's fine. You know, it's just a suggestion that as we move forward, again, it's hard to know all of the answers to this unless you're in the labeling business that some of us are, and we've got a lot of experience to perhaps share.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Next question we have is from David McDonald.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, David, how are you?
Good. I appreciate putting the Q&A session together because I think this is pretty insightful. I'm trying to remember what we talked about in October of last year, and then reviewing all of the documents. Just hearing the dialogue with Joe Hayden and Strawn has been very helpful. I wasn't aware that the 700 documents may go away. I thought we were going to have to and understand a whole another set of documents. So I get it a little bit better now. So just hearing some of that insight has been helpful, and I appreciate it. And very glad to hear that we're going to have time to implement some of these label changes as well. And good to know that we're going to have some time after this Energy Star version 7 goes into effect is much more understandable heading into that revised or updated implementation plan. So this has just been good, and I appreciate everybody's input.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, obviously we all know there's a lot going on this year, and we don't want to make it any more burdensome than we have to, obviously. And I'll expand on the 700 going away. I know, Steve brought it up and you mentioned it. What I will say is eventually, yes. But, this is going to be a process as we get the program accredited. And like I said, the way it's being set up, we'll have the entire program being 7,000 accredited. But we can add the products to that scope as we see fit going down the path. So if we want to add recertification of Windows at the beginning, that's something that we can have added to the scope. And when we're ready to add full certification of Windows, it's just another application to ANAB to say we want to now add this to our scope. And then we can add doors. So it is going to be a process as we go through, the steps and see how effective and efficiently we can run the program. But it gives us a lot more flexibility than trying to throw it all in at once.
I don't see any more questions.
Yeah, I had lost that window for a second, Jen, but I do have it back. I think I clicked off somewhere. So, I mean, does anybody have any additional questions or anything else that we can address?
To say again, Ron, I appreciate you taking time to do this. I think everyone appreciates hearing this up front, so thanks.
And, and again, I'm going to try to set something up after we get the public comments and have a chance to take a look at them. We'll do something similar. And, and I will ask, you guys are out there in the field. I mean, get some of your friends to join in as well. Honestly, I was hoping for a few more to join this webinar. We didn't get the numbers I thought we were hoping to get. So, spread the word and make sure that some of these other folks that you're aware of, if they have questions, just ask. And, I think we've been reasonably open throughout this whole process, and we need to keep it that way. And ultimately, it affects all of us. Every one of us is a stakeholder in this, so we want to make sure that we're successful when we move forward.
I believe Steve has another comment.
Go ahead, Steve. Jan, I'm not hearing Steve.
There we go. Now
there he is.
I needed to be unmuted by the organizer, but no, Ron, I appreciate that last point that you made, getting others involved. The unfortunate part of all of this, and I don't know how to make it easier, is the information came out. In fact, you had to dig a little bit to find the information. I was alerted to some of this by David earlier this week or last week, I don't recall. So it could be that to your point of getting more and more people involved, is there a way to sort of broadcast this to the participants or the licensees so that they're aware of it? Fundamentally, I don't have any significant issues with all of this. It's just that most of us who've been involved in this for a long time don't like surprises. So to have some of this stuff clarified, that these are all new documents, blah blah blah, but fundamentally there's not significant changes or changes that will change the work that we've been doing for many, many years.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can talk to the folks. I mean, yeah, I mean, we can absolutely be better in our messaging. And this actually, Jen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think we started about 6 weeks ago sending notifications out and putting it in bulletins and what have you. And, you know, that this was coming up, and I think we were sending about one notification out a week.
Is it by email, or do we have to go to the NFRC site to find all of it? Because quite frankly, I don't check that in any sort of regular way. Only when I need to get something from NFRC do I go to the web link. Otherwise, I really depend on well, number one, to be fair, I don't deal with a lot of the social media stuff.
Well, yeah, well, these were going out in email as well as being on the site.
Yeah, that's it's sort of missed me then. So, but it could be that there's others within Geldwin that have it.
Well, Ron, it's Joe again. I might add to that because I talked to Mark Michelson from Anderson a couple days ago, and that was the first he'd heard about this webinar. He apparently had not received the emails for whatever reason. So maybe there are others who weren't even aware of it. It's possible.
Well, that might help to explain why the participation level is low, Joe.
Exactly.
Because I didn't get it until David alerted me, and apparently Mark didn't. You know, there's a group of some of your power users, so to speak, that would like to have been engaged.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what happened there, but some folks maybe didn't get the word, didn't get the emails for some odd reason.
Well, then I'll check with our internal folks. I mean, I'll look at Jen. I know we don't personally send those emails out, but I'll check with the folks that take care of that stuff and see if we can figure out what may or may not have happened.
Ron, this is Dave. I could just expand on that a little bit because I received the notices 3 different ways. I believe it was from a bi-weekly newsletter, another form, and then there was one that stood out by itself covering the document. So I think I had 3 different ways that it came to me. And some of the questions I had for people of whether or not they had reviewed the document, seen it, is kind of what started the dialogue of what is this about, and can you forward it to me? So I think sometimes when something important like this comes through, that's not mixed in with everything else NFRC is doing, it stands out saying, hey, very important document review, which I think the third one said something like that. It's just
David,
some people may not pay attention to like a newsletter as much.
Yeah, David, you did break up a little bit there. I'm going to kind of play that back because you said you had gotten it 3 different ways, through email, through a newsletter, and I think the bulletin was the other way.
Yeah, I think it was 3 different ways that it came to me. I don't have them up in front of me right now, but it was at least 3 different emails I received.
Again, I'll check with them and make sure. I mean, I know Jen and Rob have been sending some different notifications out, even on the public comments of the ANSI documents as well as these, and I know they both end on the 19th. So I'll check with them and make sure that there isn't something happening there that some of the folks aren't getting the information. Okay, any other questions?
I don't see any.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you for your time, and certainly thank you for your input. And please go to the document, public document comment or public comment website and put your comments in. You know, as I mentioned, we have gotten, I'll say we've gotten quite a few comments. Some related to one another, some are just some general questions. But please go there, and if there are ways that you feel we can further clean up some of the language, and I know one of my goals, and Steve Strong, I'll kind of say this to you, I know one of my goals was to reduce the number of pages that folks need to read through to be able to understand what they need to do. So I am all for getting rid of language that's reiterated several times. So, you know, please go and give us your comments. We'll take a look at them. We're probably going to take about 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks, so we can get a board work group meeting together and go over them. And as I said, we'll look at it based on the requirements of the accreditation that we're going for, and you know, we'll address those, you know, how we see fit based on those requirements. And if needed, we'll take those sections and come back out for public comment. Okay, Jen? Anything else?
Thanks for putting this all together, Ron. Looking forward to more communication.
Yep, you're welcome. And again, thank you all for joining, and we'll look forward to the comments.
Thanks, Ron. Take care.
Take care.